Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Academy, announcing the 24th of our Italian Wine Ambassador courses to be held in London, Austria, and Hong Kong from the 27th to the 29th of July. Are you up for the challenge of this demanding course? Do you want to be the next Italian Wine Ambassador? Learn more and apply now at vinitalyinternational.com.
Welcome to this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls series on wine, food and travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. For the next weeks, we will be focusing on a dozen trophy-winning wineries from the competitions that took place in Verona at the start of Vinitaly in early April. The winning wines are without doubt some of the very best that Italy has to offer. What I'm most interested in discovering are the stories behind the bottles, learning about the wines themselves, of course, and also about the people who make them, where they're from, what they eat, how they live. It's a fascinating journey that will take us all across Italy, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. In this special 5-star Wines and Wine Without Walls edition, I'm delighted to shine a spotlight on the wine estate of Cantine Volpi in Piemonte, in the province of Alessandria. Cantine Volpi has just won Miglior Vino Biologico, the best organic wine, for its Colli Tortonesi Timorasso at the prestigious 5-star Wines Wine Without Walls competition that took place in Vinitaly recently in April. My guest today is Marco Volpi, who joins me from near Tortona. Ciao, Marco. Many congratulations on this important award, and thanks for being my guest today. How are you?
Ciao, Mark. So thank you a lot for inviting me at this podcast, at this interview. It's really nice to be here. So I'm good. Really wanting to hear about what you want to know about my winery and my wines and my place where we live, where we make wine since now more than 100 years.
Well, that's great. That's exactly what I want to know about. The aim of my show is really to give our listeners the story behind the award-winning bottles. So, first of all, to help our listeners know where you are, can you tell us about the Colli Tortonesi? I think many people who have visited Piedmont are maybe more familiar with Le Langhe or the wine hills of the Astigiana, the Monferrato. The Colli Tortonesi, less so. So tell us a little bit about where you are.
Yes. So first of all, geographically, we are in south of Piemonte, southeast of Piemonte, to be accurate. It's true. Many people don't know a lot about this production area, even if it is a very historical wine production, grape and wine production area. There are many historical writings telling the production of wine in Tortona has always been very big, very huge. I think that in the Duomo construction builders back 500, 600 years ago were being paid also with some wine coming exactly from Tortona Hill. So we are talking about a very historical production area.
Wow, that's amazing.
We are close to the most famous area, so we are like 20 minutes far from Gavi and 20 minutes far from Monferrato, to give you an idea about the area. We've been producing the most typical grapes of Colli Tortonesi are Barbera, Timorasso. Of course, we're going to talk about Timorasso a bit more throughout this interview, I guess, and then Cortese and Dolcetto. Those are the most important grape and the most important wines of the area.
Okay, Marco. Now, you said that your family wine estate has been going for more than 100 years. Tell us a little bit about your estate itself, the history of Cantine Volpi.
Yes. So basically, in 1914, I am the 5th generation of the company. Okay, so in 1914, my family started producing wine in order to sell it in their restaurant. So they had a really a small restaurant here in Tortona, and they started to produce wine from their own vineyards to sell it only at the restaurant. Then a few years later, the focus started to be more on the grape growing and on the wine producing business instead of the restaurant business. So they started to produce more. They started to buy also grape from other growers here around Tortona. And then in 30, 40 years, they decided to build a big winery right outside of Tortona to vinificate from the Colli Tortonesi area. The company grew a lot in the 50s and in the 60s, and then in the 70s had a very big increase in production thanks to Cortese grapes. Cantine Volpi has been the first producer of a naturally fermented sparkling Cortese wine that was huge in Italy in the 70s and then in the 80s. It was really a revolution in that sector, and Cantine Volpi started to produce a few hundreds bottles of that product at the beginning of the 70s, and at the end of the 80s, we were producing around 1 million bottles.
Oh my goodness!
Of that Cortese Frizzante. Yes, so it was the moment when Cantine Volpi started to really grow if compared to other wineries in the area.
Cortese, of course, being the grape of Gavi.
Exactly.
So more familiar perhaps for still wines, but a sparkling Cortese. Gosh, that's interesting, and a huge number of bottles. I assume that was the Martinotti method.
Correct. That's correct. So we've been one of the first producers to put Cortese into these tanks to create a sparkling wine, and it's been a success back in the days. Then of course after a few years, end of the 90s and beginning of 2000s, of course we had this huge phenomenon of prosecco that really arrived and changed a lot the market, changed the consumption of the wine. So since then, Cortese started to decrease a bit. So basically, my father decided to change a bit the focus of the winery in two different directions. So at the beginning of 2000, he decided to have one focus on the local vineyards and on autochthonous grapes, so Timorasso and Barbera, and on the other hand, on organic production. So at the beginning of 2000s, to farm organically in Tortona, it was not that easy. So in order to have organic certified wines, he started to go a bit around other production areas with his enologist also, to look for growers of grape that were able to produce organically easier. So I'm talking about other production areas in Italy. So for example, Sicily and Puglia. And they started to source grapes from those areas to produce wines here in Tortona, to sell that wine in all over the world, and organic certified wine. Then, a few years after that, they've been able, also thanks to the expertise they had throughout those years, to also go organic here in Piemonte. So now we have also organic vineyards here, family-owned vineyards here in Piemonte, farmed organic. And I'm talking about Barbera and Timorasso vineyards. One of them is the one that gave the name to the wine that won as best organic wine at Vinitaly. So Timorasso is the name of the grape, and La Zerba is the name of the estate, of the family-owned estate close to Tortona, where we have the vineyards.
Okay, so it's been a real commitment then for the last 2 decades to really focusing on organic wines. And I guess it must have been very, very satisfying when at the Wine Without Walls competition, this wine that we'll talk about, the Timorasso, won the Best Organic Wine Award, which is a huge achievement. So many congratulations for that.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Yes.
It's not easy cultivating organically in Piemonte, I would imagine. Far more difficult than perhaps in drier areas such as Sicily or Puglia.
Yeah, we have to say that this climate change, it is a bit helping on the organic side. I think it's the only positive side of this climate change is that we have drier seasons, drier summers. This year, I think it's the driest season we're having in 70 years. We're having huge problems we're missing rain, so we're having huge problems. But on the other hand, of course, it makes organic farming easier. You have less diseases, less problems in the vineyards. So it's getting easier because summers are getting drier. But it changed. It really changed, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years. Not more than that. Not more than that.
Okay. It made organic farming more possible in a consistent way rather than just in unusual years. Now, let's talk about Timorasso. It's a great variety that many people won't be familiar with, yet which has emerged as one of the most exciting and interesting and characterful of all Piedmont's white grape varieties. Tell us about Timorasso, because it's really only found in the Colli Tortonesi. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct. It's an indigenous variety of Colli Tortonesi, and yes, it is. It is still surprising. Every time I talk about Timorasso, I have a surprised face. Let's say, because until 20 years ago, nobody, but really nobody, not even wine critics, knew about this grape variety. And we had, I think, around 10 hectares left of Timorasso at the beginning of 2000s. And I'm talking not as the hectare of Cantine Volpi. I'm talking about the old producers of the area. Only 10 hectares at the beginning of 2000. So it was almost disappeared. Why? Why was it disappeared? Because it's not an easy grape variety to cultivate. If you want to have volumes, you do not get quality, and also you do not get volumes, because the plant is producing a lot of grape. But if the plant is stressed with too much grape, all the grape you have will not get to the right amount of sugar. It will not get healthy at the end of the harvest. So really, really hard to cultivate. So if we go back to the 80s, to the 70s, when the market really needed a lot of wine, the market was asking for huge quantities of Italian wine. Of course, all the growers, they didn't want to go with a hard variety to cultivate. So they started to replant maybe other varieties like Barbera and Cortese instead of Timorasso. And so it was almost disappeared. Then, the beginning of 2000, the consumption a bit changed. The focus on indigenous varieties and on quality was more and more important. And so it was rediscovered a bit.
Thank you for listening to Italian Wine Podcast. We know there are many of you listening out there, so we just want to interrupt for a small ask. Italian Wine Podcast is in the running for an award, the Best Podcast Listening Platform, through the Podcast Awards, the People's Choice. Listener nominations is from July 1st to the 31st, and we would really appreciate your vote. We are hoping our listeners will come through for us, so if you have a second and could do this small thing for us, just head to ItalianWinePodcast.com from July 1st to the 31st and click the link. We thank you, and back to the show.
We planted the first hectare in 2004, and we have now around 5 hectares in our estate. And yes, it is a very atypical wine. The wine you get from Timorasso grape is really atypical. It's not the classic. White. It's not the classic Italian white wine for sure. It has way more structured and contrast if compared to a normal classic white wine. Also, for example, the main characteristic of Timorasso is that you can have Timorasso after many years after the harvest. So the longevity of Timorasso is another very peculiar characteristic of the wine, and really, really appreciated by the market now. So yes, it was it really is right now a huge. What is happening? It's really it's even strange at some point for us, because we are having Barolo producers coming from Langhe to Tortona to buy the grape or to buy vineyards, to plant new vineyards. We do have around 350 hectares of Timorasso now, if compared to the 10 we had 20 years ago.
Wow, all in the Colli Tortonesi.
Correct. Exactly. All in the Colli Tortonesi. So really surprising what's going on. We need to, of course, to still a lot to do, of course, to make this wine known, to make this wine, to spread the word about this wine, and also this kind of initiative, like what we are doing now. It's important, to understand and to know a bit more about this great grape and wine variety.
I think it's important what you said, Marco, that it's not Timorasso is not a wine like we think of as a classic Italian white, which I think Gavi at its best really is a really classic Italian dry white wine with that steeliness and the minerality, and it's a beautiful wine with food. A lot of people love Gavi, know Gavi, but Timorasso has this greater structure, concentration, and as you say, that ability to age well. Gavi, I don't think we think of really so much as a wine to lay down and age. We want to keep that freshness even in the bigger styles. But Timorasso is unusual, and I think people now, our listeners certainly, are seeking wines with real character and flavors that you simply don't find elsewhere. There's so many wines that taste the same around the world, but these wines, such as Timorasso, are unique and they need to be safeguarded. So bravo to you and your family for continuing the belief in a grape such as Timorasso. Tell us a little bit about La Zerba, how you produce this wine. Is it a classic vinification?
Yes, so La Zerba is the name of the estate where we have the vineyards. We have 2 vineyards at La Zerba. We have one Barbera vineyard, around 4 hectares, 5 hectares actually, and we have other 4 hectares of Timorasso. We do, for both Barbera and Timorasso, we do manual harvest. Basically, Timorasso normally is the first half of September. Last year it was around the 10th of September, while Barbera is around the end of September. So manual harvest, 100% of the grapes are used for the same batch, let's say. So the wine is composed only by a grape coming from the same vineyard. We do a classic white vinification for the first, pressing machine. We go to the pressing machine. First we crush the grape, then we go to the pressing machine, and then we go to the fermentation. Fermentation happens in steel tanks. After that, we go to concrete tanks. We do have most of the tanks we have for stabilization and aging are concrete tanks. We stay with Timorasso. We stay for around from 10 to 12 months in concrete tanks on its lease. Okay. And after that, after 12 or 13 months, we bottle the Timorasso. So then what happens? That we keep the Timorasso inside the bottle for at least 4 months before going to the market. And then we have our fresher vintage, with the fresher vintage, for example, if we think about the 2021 harvest that we did last year, the 2021 vintage will be available on the market on around March 2023. So we begin already after the vinification and the aging. When we go on the market, we already have a pretty aged white wine. So normally for agave, for example, like you said before, to keep the comparison, if we are now already, we as producers are already selling the 2021 vintage of Gavi. And in a few months from now, they will be asking for the new vintage. So this already at the beginning of the stage of Timorasso, we have a huge difference if compared to other white varieties.
Yes, that's a very important point. It's really a different style, a different type of wine completely.
Yes, and also I think that what is very important for Timorasso is the bottle aging. The bottle aging, I think we should be even braver, let's say, and we should always keep the wine a bit more before releasing to the market, even a few months more inside the bottle, because we have a reserva label of Timorasso. When we age for 2 more years inside the bottle, the wine, and 10 months more. So first 10 months more on its lease, and then 2 years more in the bottle. So we go on the market. We are now on the market with the 2017 vintage. We do only 600 bottles of that wine. So it's really a niche production, but it really, you can really see how the potential of Timorasso, and why Timorasso is so it has this aging evolution that is really extraordinary.
Which is not usual with Italian white wines, actually. I'm thinking of perhaps the Etna Bianco with its high acidity from Caricante ages beautifully, and some Verdicchio wines have that characteristic. But a lot of Italian whites are meant to be drunk when young and fresh. So this is a rarity and something very special. Now, it's a wine, I'm sure, that goes very well with the gastronomy of the area. But before we turn to that, I just want to briefly speak about your Barbera, because, again, our listeners are familiar perhaps with Barbera d'Alba, or with the wines from Monferrato, Nizza, d'Asti, Barbera d'Asti. How does the Barbera from the Colli Tortonese differ from wines from these other areas? What makes it unique?
Well, you asked the right question, I have to say, because normally when we think when normal people, let's say, we think about Barbera, we think about the Barbera d'Asti. So really high acidity, sometimes a hard wine to drink, let's say. Well, Colli Tortonesi Barbera are pretty different from Barbera Asti, for example. So they are way warmer. So let's say more warm in your mouth, more or less, with acidity, of course, but in a more mild acidity, let's say. Then all of our Barberas, they make also the malolactic fermentation, of course. So also that helps with this warm in your mouth. But Barbera of Colli Tortonese is really particular for that reason. So also our Barbera coming from La Zerba estate, it's it's also somehow different from Barbera of Colli Tortonese, because it is a very old vineyard. We estimate the average age of the plants to be around 75, 80 years old, the average. So we have more than 100 years vines, plants in a vineyard. Of course, the productivity of the vineyards is really low. We are around 70 quintals by hectare. So I'm talking about a really low productivity. But still, we don't want productivity out of that vineyard. We want, let's say, really quality and particularity out of that vineyard. So that the age of the vines really helps a lot.
Sure, that low yields from older vines, but greater concentration, greater quality.
Exactly.
Marco, let's turn now, because your Barbera as well as the Timorasso, these are wines that are really made to go with the gastronomy of the area. Tell us a little bit about the gastronomy of the Colli Tortonesi.
So we have the variety of the gastronomy is really, like in every Italian regions, I have to say it's really huge. We have very niche producers of cheese. We have indigenous variety of cheese. We could say indigenous variety because it's a cheese that is produced only here in Tortona. It's called Montebore.
Oh, I haven't had that.
And it's a mixed variety of cheese. So it has milk coming both from goat and cows. And so it seems like a wedding cake. It is, if you look for Montebore pictures on the web, you will find those cheeses that they look like a wedding cake. And it's really particular as a product. And it goes perfectly both with Timorasso and with Barbera. Because I have to say that Timorasso, due to its concentration, to its contrast, complexity, and sapidity, it goes really well, not only with very light products, but also with heavier, let's say, products. So, for example, ham, for example, cheese, and also light meat food based. So really also not only the fish. Normally with wine you normally suggest the fish based dishes, but this goes actually very well with the wide category of products.
Okay, so that robust structure of Timorasso, I would imagine with various risotti, mushrooms, of course.
Mushrooms risotto. That would be that is also we have in autumn in our places you can find both mushrooms but also truffles. You can find the white truffles also in Colli Tortonesi area, both black and white truffles. But it's one of our territory. The soil of Tortona is actually the same soil of Langhe. The soil of Langhe is called Tortoniano the technical name is Tortoniano, coming from Tortona. So also the products that you can find that grows in the area are similar sometimes, and truffle is one example of that. Truffle of Alba, you can also find truffle of Tortona in Colli Tortonesi.
I didn't know that. I've not heard that before. That's really interesting. And this is soil that's derived from an ancient sea.
Yeah, exactly, correct.
Final question, Marco. As we say, the Colli Tortonesi are not so well known for visitors. If people want to visit the Colli Tortonesi, what are the main attractions? What should they do? Can they visit the Cantine Volpi, for example? But what other things would be an attraction for visitors to come?
Well, first of all, I have to say that thanks to Timorasso, in the last few years, there has been a more movement if I'm talking about hospitality structures. So a lot of new tasting rooms being created, a lot of new wineries creating winery tour, vineyards tour, and so on. Also, we are an example of that. We are building the new tasting room with wine shop also at La Zerba, so in the vineyards, exactly. And we, starting from March 2023, we will start with the tours and guided tours of the vineyards with the tasting at the end of the tour. Our territory is not really small, as you could think. It's 4 different valleys of hills, so it's really wide and spread. There is a lot of hiking that you can do in our places, because the hills then they become the mountains that they separate Liguria and Piemonte. So we are talking about 1,800 height mountains. So nice peaks to go hiking and also mountain biking. These kind of activities, if maybe combined also with some winery tours, those are an example of what you can do.
And I imagine also some very good local restaurants.
Yeah, that's for sure. We do have a really wide variety of that, starting from let's say more normal restaurants, but also going really fine and really high level, let's say, and fine restaurants. So we have everything that you can get, that you can have. And also, if you are an art person, let's say, in Tortona, there is a very, very nice museum of Divisionism. Divisionism is an important art movement that started in Italy at the beginning of the last century. And it's really nice to visit. You can visit it every day. So it's also another very nice thing to do in Tortona.
Okay, well, you've really given a very good overview of both Cantine Volpi, of this special grape variety Timorasso, and also of the Colli Tortonesi. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you today, Marco. Thank you very much for being my guest. I look forward to visiting myself as soon as I can.
Yes, for sure. Thanks a lot for the interview, and I'm waiting for you to come here in Tortona, of course.
Ok, grazie. A presto.
Grazie, ciao, a presto.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Vinitaly Academy, home of the gold standard of Italian wine education. Do you want to be the next ambassador? Apply online at vinitalyinternational.com for courses in London, Austria, and Hong Kong, the 27th to the 29th of July. Remember to subscribe and like Italian Wine Podcast, and catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods. You can also find our entire back catalog of episodes at ItalianWinePodcast.com.
Guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.